Hey, I'm Sai. Welcome to Spiritual Yapper. Here I make videos on Hindu mythology, philosophy, and a bit of mysticism. So let's get to it. We all want to be immortals, to live on forever. Some do it through achieving things. Some do it through having children and living through their children. Well, that's one kind of immortality. But today we are going to talk about another kind of immortality for which people have voyaged, killed, plundered, and did expeditions. Some call it holy grail, some call it ambrosia, some call it Amrth. Amrth is what the gods in Hindu mythology used to drink to stay immortal and to avoid death. And Amrth comes from Sanskrit, and mrityu in Sanskrit means death. And a in the beginning of a sentence or of a word means whatever precedes it is going to be negated. So Amrth literally means immortal or not dying, undead. Now, thousands of miles away in ancient Greece, ambrosia is what the gods used to drink in order to stay immortal. And I think there is a version of the story of Achilles where he is being dipped in the nectar of immortality, which is ambrosia, which makes him almost immortal other than the one single part that they missed out, which is the heel. Hence the Achilles heel. Interestingly, ambrosia and Amrth, they are both derived from the same Proto-Indo-European root word mrthos, which means death. Well, enough with the nerdy stuff. Now let's get to the story part, which everybody is waiting for. In the Hindu mythology, we have this particular character named Durvasa, and he's a monk or a saint, let's say, and he's basically a walking volcano. He's so easily irritable, and the problem is that he also has a lot of powers. So if he gets really angry at you, no, not even really, just a little bit angry at you, he's gonna curse you and your next 5 generations. So this story is about how the gods or the devas in Hindu mythology loses all their powers because of a curse of Durvasa. Another character you need to know about is Indra, and Indra is the king of all the gods or devas, as how you call it in Sanskrit or in Hindi. And one day Durvasa came to meet Indra, who was the king of all the gods. And Durvasa had this one garland which he got from some special ritual or something. And he comes to Indra and gives him this particular garland and says like, oh, here, this is my present to you, keep it and do as you wish. And of course, Indra should have been more careful when he received this particular garland, knowing who Durvasa is, who he's a hot-tempered guy. You need to be careful when you are dealing with hot-tempered guys, right? But nah, he didn't. He took the garland and he put it on the tusk of his elephant. Of course, he's a king. He has an elephant. That's pretty normal in India. And he puts it on the tusk of the elephant. This particular garland had so many flowers, and it had quite a strong smell, which the elephant of course didn't like because elephants are sensitive. Elephant took the garland and threw it on the floor. And of course, this is what Durvasa or the monk was waiting all along for. He got so annoyed, so pissed off at Indra for not treating his garland with respect. He curses Indra and the entire race of devas or gods to not have vitality anymore. Basically, he strips their powers away from them. And of course, Indra tries to talk with Durvasa and pleads like, please come on, like don't do this, like it's not just me, it's my entire friends and everybody I know and care about, you cannot do this. But no, Durvasa did not flinch. Okay, side note, just like there are gods in Hindu mythology, there are also demons, and they are called asuras. But what you also need to understand is that this word asura doesn't really mean demon, or deva means god. It's more like an anode and cathode in a battery. Like you cannot say that one is negative and one is positive in the sense of one is good and another one is evil. They're just two sides of the same coin. They're quite complementary to each other. They both need to exist hand in hand. And this is also the idea of asuras and devas in Hindu mythology, or the gods and demons. It sounds so heavy, that word, but that's all we have for now. So the king of all devas is Indra, the one who just got cursed by Durvasa. And the king of all the demons at that moment was Bali or Mahabali. And he decides to take advantage of this particular moment where devas or the gods were a bit weak. And he decides to wage a war against devas who were in power at that time, and decides to take control of all the realms from the devas. And of course, this is something that has been going on for ages. Like at times the devas would come into power, and then the asuras would defeat them, and then they would come into power, and then devas would go do something and plot something, and then they would come on top. And it's always this power balance of, like, I guess it's similar to the idea of like the right wing and left wing, you know, like 4 years here, 4 years over there. Yeah, apparently it's been going on since a long time. So the king of asuras, Mahabali, decides to take advantage of this whole situation and wages a war against devas. And he wins, of course, because the devas were quite powerless already because of the curse. The defeated devas, including Indra, the king of devas, decides to go to Mahavishnu, the sustainer, you know. They basically go and like, oh, come on, Mahavishnu, like, you know, like we are the gods, like we are stripped of our power. What can we do now? So Mahavishnu comes up with this idea to try and extract the nectar of immortality in order to restore the vitality of devas. And it's a long process of how to extract this particular nectar of immortality, which is called Amrth. And Mahavishnu suggests this idea of teaming up with asuras or the demons and doing it together. And of course, they offered the idea of course, we would split the Amrth or the nectar of immortality once we get it. But of course, Mahavishnu made a side deal with the devas that we are not going to give the asuras any of the nectar of immortality. We will just keep all of it to ourselves. We are just, you know, saying this right now so that we would get their help. So in order to extract the nectar of immortality, they needed to churn the ocean of milk, or Ksheerasagara in Sanskrit, which literally means milky ocean. And from that, in the end, the Amrth should come out. Butter is made from milk by this particular process called churning, and what you basically do is you have a churning rod. It is being moved back and forth by this rope that is being tied to it, and this is the process of churning. So as a churning rod, you need something that is really huge because it's an ocean that you want to churn. And they bring this particular entire mountain called Mandara and places it in the middle of the ocean. Now they needed a big rope with which they can turn this particular huge mountain so that they can churn the ocean. And of course, the rope should also be really long and strong. That's when Vasuki, or a serpent, came to help. He is basically the serpent that is coiled around the neck of Shiva. If you know about Shiva, he always walks around with a serpent on his neck. And this particular serpent is the king of all the serpents. So he's really strong and powerful. So he offers himself to be the rope with which they are going to churn the milky ocean for nectar of immortality, for which he will also get a part. That's his commission. Devas are now holding the tail end of Vasuki, and asuras are holding the mouth end of Vasuki, and they start churning the ocean for the nectar of immortality or Amrth. A lot of gifts or presents are coming out of this particular ocean as they churn, and I'm not going to mention all of them, but some things are really interesting for the story. And one of them is a particular poison named Hala Hala. This poison in some versions are coming out of the ocean itself, and in some other versions it's coming from the mouth of Vasuki, the serpent, because his body is going through so much tensions that he ends up spitting poison. The problem is this particular poison is so poisonous that if it falls on the land, all the worlds would get destroyed or ceases to exist. And that's when the Shiva, the destroyer of the worlds, decides to step in. As soon as the poison is out, he does what he's good at, he drinks it. As soon as he drinks it, wife of Shiva, Parvati, who doesn't want to see her husband dying, decides to choke his throat. Then of course he would want to spit it out because you have something and you cannot swallow it. I really wonder if this is the oldest choking reference. And that's when all the gods decides to hold his mouth so that he wouldn't spit it out on the floor, because in that case all the worlds would cease to exist. I can't imagine the situation he was in. He can't spit nor swallow. In the end, poor Shiva had to just keep it in his throat because it's not going down because of Parvati, and it's not coming out because of all the gods. Poison stays in his throat and it becomes blue. And hence, Shiva also has this name Nilakantha, or the one with the blue neck. And after the poison, the next one that comes out of the ocean by churning is the nectar of immortality in the hands of a particular monk. So a monk appears out of the ocean, and in his hands there is this pot which was full of nectar of immortality. And this particular monk is known as the father of Ayurveda. His name is Dhanvantari. So he is also one of the presents ocean gives to humankind and Devas and Asuras. Now I want to talk a little bit about something else which will help us understand this particular story a bit more. And now we enter the realm of chakras, kundalini, and mysticism and yogic practices, which are so talked about in media so much that it loses its meaning, but it is what it is. Well, most of us know that there are 6 chakras inside our body and 1 that is outside our body. So in total 7 chakras. These chakras or plexuses are formed in the center of our body where the spinal cord is, or the central nervous system, and this is called as Sushumna Nadi in Sanskrit. This particular nadi, or the central nervous system, is going from bottom of your spine all the way to top of your head. On the bottom of the spine you have this center called Mooladhara, and on top of your skull you have the center called Sahasrara, or the crown chakra, or 1000 petal lotus, which is the literal translation. And on our right side of this particular central channel, you have another channel called Pingala, or the sun channel. And on the left side, you have Ida, or the moon channel. Interestingly, the sun channel represents, of course, sun, according to the name, but also it is heat, it is activity, it is movement. On the left side, you have Ida, which is more about passiveness, it's more about intuition, it's more about thinking than action. And the right channel is connected with your right nostril, and the left channel is connected with your left nostril, and they cross in your third eye chakra and goes to the right and left. So the right one is going to the left side and left one is going to the right side. All these, of course, according to the ancient texts and things. Now, at the bottom of the spine, the right channel, the left channel, and the central channel are being connected at this chakra called Mooladhara, or root chakra. And in the root chakra, on the bottom of the spine, lies this particular energy called kundalini. And all the yogic practices are designed to take this energy that is on the bottom of your spine all the way to the top of your skull, that is onto the Sahasrara, or the crown chakra. And this particular energy is said to be coiled like a serpent on the bottom of your spine. And when the serpent rises, that's when people call it awakenings and stuff like that, or at least that's what it is supposed to be. Now, in order to move this particular energy on through the central nervous system, or the Sushumna Nadi, you need to balance the right channel and the left channel really well and activate them at the same time. And that's when the central one gets activated also. That's when you can take this particular energy all the way up to the skull. And interestingly, this is really similar to the idea of the story that we just discussed, right? Like the asuras and the devas, the right and left, the passive and the active, the anode and cathode. They needed to work together, interestingly, with a snake in order to get the nectar of immortality. And I see this analogy of like the mountain as the central nervous system, and the right and left, the asuras and devas. And then you have the serpent, that is this particular energy itself, the kundalini or shakti or whatever you want to call it. And they are churning the ocean or churning your own body in order to attain immortality. And interestingly, there is another Hindu yogic practice that is supposed to generate a particular fluid in your mouth that is sweet, which would grant you health and would make you not thirsty or hungry anymore. Sounds like a kind of ambrosia, and it's also called Amrth in Sanskrit, interestingly. But interestingly, what comes at first when you do this practice is not this sweet nectar, but something that is bitter. People say, or yogis say, that you are not supposed to swallow this one. Well, we should ask Shiva for advice, because he was also in such a situation. This is when another chakra becomes really important here, and this chakra is called Vishuddhi. It's around here, and it is called throat chakra in English. But let's go into the Sanskrit name a bit. So Vishuddhi literally translates to the one that purifies. Like, what needs to be purified, right? And again, we should ask Shiva maybe. So yeah, the idea is that what comes in the beginning before this nectar in your body is actually a poison, and that needs to go through your throat, because your throat is the one that purifies it. And only after you purify the poison can you have the nectar of, or Amrth. I am reminded of something that Carl Jung wrote. I don't really remember exactly how he wrote it, but a tree cannot grow all the way up to the heaven without its roots deep down in the hell. So yeah, I think these practices and these mythological stories point at one single direction, that accept your dark sides and light sides and work with both of them, and that's when something magical could happen. Until next time.